on the table was hollow, forced, like every year before. Paper crowns from cheap party hats drooped over heads too proud to admit they didn't love each other. But this birthday was different. This time, I had quietly hoped things would change. I'd paid the restaurant bill in advance, booked the private room, even ordered Dad's favorite cake, the one Mom never bothered to bake anymore. I'd been holding on to some sliver of hope. Maybe this year, after 10 years of covering their rent, medical bills, car payments, and groceries, they might finally say thank you. Instead, my father stood up, raised a glass of orange juice because he didn't drink cheap champagne, and gave the most humiliating toast I'd ever heard. To my daughter, who, after 32 years, still hasn't figured out how not to be a burden. He smiled. You're nothing but an embarrassment. No marriage. No real career. Just handouts from your tech startup while pretending it's success. We didn't raise you for this. The silence was deafening. My uncles chuckled into their napkins. My mother sipped her wine like she hadn't just watched me shrink into myself. And my cousin Brielle whispered, I'd die if that was said to me. I didn't say a word. I stood up slowly, wiped my palms against my black dress, and whispered, Got it. I looked at them all, really looked, and realized for the first time I wasn't their daughter in their eyes. I was just their safety net. That night, I packed a small bag. When I walked toward the front door of our old home, where I'd been staying during their financial rough patch, my dad blocked me. You're not welcome here anymore, he said, as though I hadn't kept that roof over their heads. Mom added softly, Maybe it's better this way. You need to grow up and stop pretending your money makes you worthy. I blinked once, then again. Then I said, Okay. I walked out into the rain, didn't bother to take an umbrella, and got in my car. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry either. I was hollow. Until the next morning. That's when I did it. I opened my secure client dashboard. Their credit cards, mine. The utilities, mine. The car insurance, the phone plans, the gas cards, the streaming services, even the Netflix password. All in my name. And I froze everything. Not to punish them, but to remind myself. They had taught me to be useful. I became indispensable. They taught me to be quiet. I learned to observe. They taught me to serve. And I became irreplaceable. But now, they taught me the most important lesson of all. What to do when you finally have nothing left to prove. By noon, Dad called furious. Why is my card being declined? I was polite. I was calm. You asked me to stop being a burden. So I did.
Click.
By 2 p.m., Mom texted. Please.
We didn't mean it that way.
Can you at least pay the electric bill? I read it and smiled sadly. Then I put my phone face down. I wasn't being cruel. I was finally being free. And that terrified them. The same people who used me as an ATM were now watching their carefully constructed world crumble. But what happened next? That's when it all changed, when everything truly unraveled. And the twist they never saw coming wasn't just that I stopped helping. It was that someone else stepped in and revealed something my family never knew. And their jaws would drop the moment they found out. It took less than 24 hours for the begging to begin. Dad left 4 missed calls and 2 voicemails by morning. The first was full of pride and thunder. The second was shakier. I might have overreacted, okay? But you don't just pull the plug like that. Your mother's blood pressure medicine, she needs it. Mom texted, just send enough for groceries. I know you're angry. We raised you, didn't we? That should count for something. I didn't reply. Because I remembered the week I skipped meals to keep their mortgage afloat. I remembered driving 12 hours round trip to bail Dad out after he totaled his car and refused to call anyone else. I remembered every time I offered help and was told, that's what daughters are for. But even still, I wasn't at peace. I was grieving. Not just the rejection, but the realization that I had confused love with obligation for too long. That afternoon, I got a call from the company accountant, my company. She said, you might want to check the business inquiry inbox. I opened it and froze. It was an email from Ethan Carrington. Yes, that Ethan Carrington. Founder of Carrington Dynamics. Net worth somewhere in the billions. He had sent a message through the general contact form with the subject, "An angel disguise." My hands shook as I opened it. Hello. 10 years ago, I walked into a community clinic with no insurance, bleeding and scared. A young woman held my hand, paid for my care with her own card, and told me not to worry. I never forgot that. Last week, I recognized your name when I saw your startup featured in the Forbes Top 100 Emerging CEOs. It was you. I owe you my life. And I believe in returning kindness. Would you consider partnering with me on a philanthropic tech initiative? I'd like to schedule a meeting at your convenience. In person. Warm regards, Ethan C. I reread it 5 times. I never expected that day at the clinic, when I helped a man who looked lost and tired, to come full circle. He'd been just another human who needed help. That was it. No cameras. No stories. No glory. Now he wanted to meet. 2 days later, we met in a quiet glass-walled lounge downtown. Ethan was taller than I remembered, older too, but his eyes? Still kind. Still humble. You helped me without knowing who I was, he said softly, sitting across from me. Now I'd like to do the same for you. I smiled. I don't need help anymore, but I'll accept a partnership. And so, we signed a deal. Not out of pity, not as repayment, but mutual respect. By the end of that week, every major tech journal covered it. Carrington backs emerging CEO Liana Rowe in billion-dollar initiative. My name was suddenly everywhere. That same night, I got a message from Brielle, my cousin. Is it true? Are you working with Ethan freaking Carrington? Then came the family group chat. The one I was removed from months ago. I was suddenly re-added. The first message? From Dad. Proud of you, kiddo. Always knew you had it in you. Maybe swing by Sunday for dinner? I stared at the message. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a rewrite of history. I was about to delete it when I paused. Instead, I replied, I'll think about it. But I wasn't going for revenge. Not anymore. I had something bigger in mind, something they didn't expect. Something that would make them reflect and heal. And what I did next, well, it changed not just my family but our entire future. Because forgiveness isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the loudest kind of power there is. Sunday arrived before I realized I'd agreed to anything. I didn't dress to impress. No flashy designer coat. No statement heels. Just me. Plain jeans, a clean blouse, and the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needed approval. When I pulled up to the house, their house, the one I'd paid off but was never given keys to, I noticed something had changed. The lawn hadn't been mowed. The porch light was out. The usual smell of Mom's cooking wasn't floating in the air. They weren't doing well. Dad opened the door with a wide smile. There she is, he said, arms open. I paused. You never called me that before.
He looked confused.
What? There she is. You always said, why is she here? The smile faltered. But I walked in anyway. The dining table was set, but it wasn't the grand Sunday spread from my childhood. Just some reheated takeout and boxed cake. It was like they were trying but didn't know how. Mom greeted me stiffly. You look thin. I look happy, I replied.
She didn't respond.
As we sat, the room was thick with tension. My brother, Jason, who hadn't lifted a finger when things were hard, suddenly wanted to talk about my company. So, this Ethan guy, he asked, how much is he investing? I smiled politely. Enough. He leaned forward. And what's in it for you? He's not giving me anything. We're building something together. Dad coughed. It's just you should consider helping out again. Temporarily. You know how things are right now. Mom added quickly, your father's pension got delayed. And the water bill. I leaned back. You called me an embarrassment on my birthday. I said, not out of bitterness, just honesty. You kicked me out after I paid your bills for 10 years. And now, because the money's gone, you want me back? Dad's jaw clenched. You're twisting things. I nodded. That's what you've always said. Whenever I asked for kindness. The room went silent. I looked at them both. I'm not here to fight. I came because I believe people can change, but they have to want it. Then I pulled out an envelope.
Thick. Heavy.
Their eyes widened. I paid off your property taxes for the year, I said, and set up an automatic fund for your medical expenses for the next 3 years. Dad opened his mouth, stunned. Mom was already tearing up. But, I said gently, there's one condition. They looked up. You will never treat me like a burden again. A full minute passed. Then Dad said something I never thought I'd hear. I'm sorry. It cracked something open in me. Not just sadness, but decades of being unseen. Mom stood up, trembling, and walked over. I thought raising you meant controlling you. But you raised us. You held this family up while we tore you down. I stood too, and for the first time in years we hugged. A long, trembling, wordless hug. That night, we didn't talk about investments or status.
We talked about me.
They asked what I liked doing when I wasn't working, what book I was reading, if I was seeing someone. I left their home not with victory, but with peace. And I realized something. Sometimes, healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about finally being seen for who you've become. But the story wasn't over. Because 1 week later, I got a call that changed everything. Not from family. Not from Ethan. But from someone I never expected. Someone tied to my past in a way I'd completely forgotten until now. The call came on a quiet Thursday afternoon, just as I was finishing a virtual meeting. A private number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. Hello.
A pause.
Then a voice, trembling and unsure. Is this Liana Rowe? Yes, who's this? This is Olivia. Olivia Hart. My stomach dropped. Olivia Hart. The social worker who handled my foster placement 28 years ago. I hadn't heard that name since I was barely 5 years old. I know this is sudden, she said. But I came across your name in a news piece. I wasn't sure if I should reach out. But I had to tell you something I couldn't before. I sat down slowly. I was there the day your biological parents left you at the shelter, she said. And I remember how quiet you were. How you clung to your blanket and didn't cry. Not once. I blinked, confused. Biological? I thought you knew, she said softly. The Rose adopted you when you were 7. I wasn't allowed to tell you. Your adoptive mother made it clear she didn't want you looking back. I couldn't breathe for a second. Every memory suddenly cracked in half. The cold distance. The way I always felt like I was trying to earn their love. The whispers I overheard but never understood. They weren't just emotionally distant parents. They weren't my parents at all. Olivia continued. Your birth mother, she died in a car crash shortly after giving you up. But your birth father? He's alive. And he's been trying to find you. My voice shook. What? He spent years searching. But when he finally tracked the records, your name had already been changed. I stood, pacing now, unable to process. I can give you his contact, she added gently. Only if you want. My hands trembled as I took it down. His name was Marcus Delaney. I didn't call right away. I couldn't. I went for a walk. I stared at the trees. I tried to understand how the ground had shifted beneath me without warning. That night, I sat in my apartment alone. I stared at the number. Then I dialed. Hello, a warm voice answered. Hi. I think I'm your daughter. A long pause. Then a shaky breath. I've waited 30 years to hear that voice. And just like that, I broke. I cried like the child I had buried for years. And he cried too. We spoke for 3 hours. He told me everything, how he and my mother had split, how she took custody, how the system lost him in the paper shuffle. He wasn't perfect, but he had never stopped searching. He said, every birthday, I lit a candle for you. Every Christmas, I wrote a letter I never sent. I didn't know if you'd ever want to find me, but I never gave up. And in that moment I knew I had been loved, just not by the people I thought. That weekend, I flew out to meet him. He lived in a quiet coastal town. No suits. No fancy cars. Just soft-spoken kindness and a porch swing that creaked with time. He looked nothing like the man who raised me, and everything like the man I'd wished for. When he hugged me, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Safe. And that hug? It filled the space my adoptive parents never could. But I didn't hate them. I understood them now. They took me in, but they didn't know how to receive me. And maybe, just maybe, they were doing the best they knew. The story was almost over. But one final moment was coming. Something none of us could have predicted. And it would bring everyone together one last time. 3 weeks later, I returned home. Not to my apartment. To their home. The house I'd kept afloat. The one that never really felt like mine, even when my money had paid for every square inch. I wasn't sure why I went. Maybe closure. Maybe peace. Maybe something else. Mom opened the door with a wary look, like she didn't know if I was here to judge or forgive. "Can we talk?" I asked. She stepped aside. The living room looked smaller now. The same dusty photo frames, the same outdated curtains. But something was different. Dad was sitting on the couch, staring at a stack of unopened bills. He looked up when I walked in, and for once, he didn't wear the mask of pride. He just looked tired and real. "I know everything," I said quietly. They both froze. About the adoption. About where I came from. Mom's eyes went wide. "I met my birth father," I added. "His name is Marcus. He's kind. He's not rich. But he loves me." Silence. Then Dad nodded slowly. "We always meant to tell you," he muttered. But then life kept going. And we didn't know how. And eventually, we convinced ourselves it didn't matter. I sat down across from them. "You were scared," I said. "I get that now. You didn't know how to love me the way I needed. But I still tried. I gave everything I had." Mom was crying now. Not performative tears. Real ones. "I didn't know how to be a mother," she said. "You were always so strong. I thought maybe if we kept you needing us, you wouldn't leave." I shook my head. "I never needed your money. Just your approval. But I'm done chasing it now." Dad swallowed hard. "Do you hate us?" he asked. "No," I whispered. "I forgive you. But forgiveness isn't a reset button. It's a door. And it only stays open if we all walk through it." That evening we talked. Honestly. Painfully. Openly. I told them about the clinic, about Ethan, about what I'd built from nothing while they doubted me. I told them about Marcus. And they told me about their fears, their failures, their regrets. And for the first time, we saw each other. Really saw each other. 2 weeks later, I invited them to a press conference where I was unveiling the new initiative with Ethan Carrington, the Ember Project, a tech-driven platform to help displaced teens reconnect with lost family and build financial independence. I stood on stage in front of hundreds. And when the crowd clapped, I looked at the front row, where Mom and Dad sat beside Marcus. 3 parents. 3 different versions of love. And all of them finally proud. When the event ended, a journalist pulled me aside and asked, "What message do you have for young women who feel like burdens to their own families?" I looked into the camera, and I said, "You're not a burden. You're a bridge. And sometimes you have to walk away from the people on one side to find the ones waiting on the other. But that doesn't mean you have to burn anything down. You just have to choose yourself, loudly, bravely, and without apology." Later that night, I had dinner with Marcus and my adoptive parents together. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. I still had wounds, but they were healing. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is becoming so whole, so loved, so unbreakably peaceful that the people who once broke you don't know how to exist in your light. I didn't freeze their accounts to punish them. I did it to remember. I'm not their wallet. I'm not their fallback. I'm not their shame.